Hello and welcome to After Scientology, Straight Up and Vertical, the weekly show where Tony Ortega and I get together and we go over the week's events in the world of Scientology, according to the reporting done on Tony's Substack. And let me remind you at the beginning of the show, since I sometimes forget at the end, the address to Tony's Substack is right there on the screen below his smiling mug. Go there, get subscribed, get signed up, and then check in with us like you're doing right now for the wrap up. So, Tony, welcome back.
Thank you, Chris. I'm smiling because what a fun week. It was a weird week. Fun, but weird.
Very. I would agree with you completely. And it started with a new Scientology church opening in South Africa. What do we have on this one?
Well, David Miscavige proved us wrong, Chris. I think we were both suspecting that he was not going to show up for this thing, but apparently he did. David Miscavige opened 4 ideal orgs last year in Austin, Mexico City, Chicago, and Paris. He was definitely at the first 3 of those. We think he kind of faked his appearance in Paris. I think he's a little concerned because France is a little unfriendly to Scientology. So we're waiting for, okay, what's going to be the next ideal org? So the next one is this one in a town that used to be called Port Elizabeth, South Africa. It's got a new name, but the people out there all call it PE. And it's one of the most dangerous cities in the world. Cities in South Africa are very dangerous right now, and this is maybe the most dangerous of them all. And so that's why we're thinking David Miscavige doesn't want to go there. But the day after that it took place last Sunday, a week ago, I went looking around on Facebook to see if maybe some Scientologists who had gone might have posted some pictures, and I managed to find a few. And thankfully, like 3 or 4 people posted some photos. One person posted a video that I posted as well to show a little bit of the dancing and stuff that you expect at an event like that. But one of those people said something about they were so impressed that COB was there and they took a picture of him on stage. Thank you so much, because otherwise we wouldn't have known one way or the other. They still haven't posted a press release. There was no coverage in the local papers, nothing. We are just very fortunate that one of the Scientologists happened to post a picture of David Miscavige. It's clearly him. And of course, it's fun because what they do, the whole idea, Chris, is that he's trying to replace all the regular orgs with these ideal orgs. They cost a fortune. They're really not on source with what Hubbard wanted, but they're what David Miscavige wants. But they're supposed to be super standard tech, which means that whether you walk into that new church in, they call it the Church of Scientology Eastern Cape, if you walk in there, or the ideal org in Tokyo, or the ideal org in Rome, or the ideal org in Phoenix, you're going to get the exact same standard tech Scientology training, processing, whatever. But they don't want to just they want to make it seem like there's some sort of local connection. And it's usually in design, right? They spend time and money trying to make things look like so for example, the Chicago one that opened last year, they've got an LRH office. It's got a little Michael Jordan statue, and for this one, on the stage they created for the grand opening, it literally had these carvings, figures of elephants. And I don't know, it just looked funny that David Miscavige had these elephants behind him. So that was but he definitely was there. I like to see, they usually put out a press release and a slideshow so we can see who the local officials were, who spoke. They haven't put out anything like that. Everything seems a little slower these days. I'm not sure why, but yes, they do have a new ideal org in that town. I don't know how much foot traffic there's going to be in a city that dangerous that they're going to be able to attract people, but at least they got it open, right, Chris?
Well, absolutely. And I mean, South Africa is not exactly, a boom town for Scientology in a number of ways, as we discussed. I struggle, actually because we're talking about a demand that is less than Albuquerque for Scientology. And Albuquerque is like the tiniest of the West US orgs. So that's why I bring that one up, or Hawaii or something. Um, I was honestly surprised he went down there with how dangerous it is, though. I really was. I thought he would actually have more fear for his body. The other thing about Scientology in South Africa, let me just say this, is just from some history I happen to have. When I did the RPF program, the internal prison program in Scientology, the person I worked with was a South African. And she had been from South Africa. She had worked in Zimbabwe at the Rhodesian org and at the South African CLO. She was a Sea Org member. So I got some pretty boots on the ground stories, which I've only hinted at here and there over the years because it hasn't really come up much. But South Africa has not been a place that is friendly to Scientology. Let me encapsulate it that way and say that, when they were running their churches down there, I mean, they had people coming in and stealing reams of paper because that's valuable stuff. And here's a funny anecdote for you about South Africa, because the countries that the telex lines, the management line, the orders going from the Sea Org managers to the South African orgs would have the usual rhetoric: play the birthday game for blood, get those stats up or else. And the people, from the government who would read these things, intercepting these communications, would be like, what the hell revolutionary stuff is going on at these churches? Because they would immediately connect it with that. So there's probably just volumes of stuff like that, this buried Scientology sort of history in South Africa. It's a contentious place. So having all that, so that's why I was surprised that he did go down there. Do we have any idea at all? We talked about this a couple of weeks ago about the whales down there. Did you see anything in the photos that indicated anything in that direction?
I scanned every photo. I looked for familiar faces. I didn't see one. So I don't know. When Scientology puts up their press release and slideshow, we may get to see a few people. But typically, from the literature I've seen in the past, the big American donor down there are the Duggans, is Trish Duggan.
Okay.
So I would assume a lot of her money went into this particular project, but I don't know that means she would go. I really don't.
Right. Again, yeah, the danger is, the threat is real down there. It's not a joke. The other question I had is, because you were mentioning, you're right, it's been so slow on the release lines. Have we seen anything out of that IAS event yet?
No. I mean, not IS. You mean birthday event? No, yeah, you're right. In fact, not only are the last thing that they've got up is their New Year's event, but even on they have a website where they have their press releases, and those will come out daily at sometimes. They have not put up a new press release since February 19th.
Wow,
that's almost 2 months ago. So I don't know what's going on with that, because, yeah, I mean, I sometimes poke fun at the stuff they put there, and a lot of other people do too, but that never bothered them before. I don't know why it would bother them now. I mean, Alex Barnes-Ross suggested that it is just a reflection of how shorthanded they are right now, that, Scientology is struggling getting places staffed, getting people placed, getting things done. And perhaps this is why these slideshows are taking so long. I don't know. There might be something to that.
I absolutely would agree with that. That was going to be my go-to. Was going to be the person who's probably responsible for that. And in an organization like Scientology, it's going to be a person, by the way. Probably is not on the job, busted, moved, done something. Something happened. As an example, there was an individual who was in charge of all of the Dianetics promotional campaigns years ago. This person that I knew. This person went to the RPF. When they went to the RPF, they joined me there. I learned all about them and their job, but I also learned there was nobody else to take it over. And when they got busted, that was it on Dianetics promotion for years in Scientology, because they just didn't replace the function.
Yeah.
So Yeah. So that's kind of how it is in Scientology. So, wow. Yeah. So I guess we'll wait for those photos. Now, moving on to the next story this week, there were a couple points on this. That we had a Scientology appeal in the Masterson case, and a response to that. What was
Right.
that?
So I want to be real clear because from based on the responses I got, people get a little confused. Danny Masterson was convicted and sent to prison. He's serving 30 years to life. He automatically gets an appeal on that. They've been working on it for a long time, and then his defense attorneys submitted an appeal brief. I don't know, about a month ago, and so we published the whole thing. People argued about it, and it's interesting. And now we're waiting for the DA to respond. That's the criminal case where Danny's defense attorneys are trying to either get him a new trial or just get him out of prison altogether.
Yep.
The thing I wrote about this week is different. There's a civil lawsuit that Danny's victims filed against the Church of Scientology and Danny. Not just the Danny criminal case is just Danny. The one he's in prison just for what he did to these women. The civil lawsuit is against Danny and the Church of Scientology. And it was actually filed before Danny's criminal charges were filed. So this lawsuit was filed in June 2019, I believe. And it's mostly been on hold. The civil lawsuit gets put on hold during the criminal trials. Once Danny, and the point of the civil lawsuit is that these women were alleging that after they came forward to the LAPD, they've been subjected to years of harassment and intimidation and stalking by Scientology and Danny. That lawsuit got put on hold during his trials. Once he was finally convicted, then the civil lawsuit got going again. And the first thing Scientology did was file motions to strike and anti-slap motions. They're basically trying to gut the lawsuit, get the judge to remove a bunch of stuff out of it to really weaken the lawsuit. The judge denied it outright. Really strong ruling by this judge, Upendra Kalra. The women, for their part, they're trying to beef up the lawsuit. They're trying to add a victim and civil racketeering charges. We've talked about this in the past. But before Judge Kalra could rule on allowing that new version of the lawsuit, Scientology appealed his denial of their anti-slaps. That put the lawsuit on hold for another year, basically, almost a year, as that's on appeal. And we've been waiting and waiting for Scientology to file their first appeal brief in that case. So that's what I was reporting on this week. It finally came in, and Scientology is basically arguing two things. First of all, they're not trying to kill the entire lawsuit, but they're trying to. One of the things that they're saying is that these women have identified several people that have said things about them online, that called them up and said things to them. Various ways they feel harassed by these people. And Scientology denies that these people that are named have anything to do with Church of Scientology.
Right.
But they go beyond that in the appeal and say, okay, Jenny Weinman, for example, is one of the people that's named. She was Danny Masterson's assistant, and she had called up a couple of these victims, they say, to try to talk them out of pursuing charges. It's a form of intimidation, right? And Scientology's not only saying she has nothing to do with us, she was Danny's assistant and we don't have anything to do with her, but also that when she was doing that, she was just partaking in a public debate. And that's covered by free speech. So that's one argument they're making, right? The other argument, because anti-slap is about, you can't, this lawsuit is they're trying to shut down our speech. Okay. The other thing they're arguing is that Judge Kalra, what he ruled was that at this early stage in the lawsuit, these women had alleged enough to portray a conspiracy between Danny, the church, these people like Jenny Weinman, and that they're going to have to prove it later, right? If there's ever a trial, they would have to prove it to a jury. But at this early stage, they just have to allege it properly. And the judge ruled that they had alleged a conspiracy properly. Well, in their appeal, Scientology is saying, hang on, they didn't use the word conspiracy in their lawsuit. The judge is bringing that himself, and he can't do that. All right.
Mm.
So that's where they're going with it. I have, I do my best to understand the situation and have my own sort of interpretation of it. But I'm not a lawyer. I do know an appellate lawyer who specializes in this kind of thing. He's a member of our community. We call him Texas lawyer. He is a Texas appeals lawyer. And I had him look at it, and he went even farther. He was saying, look, first of all, there's nothing stopping David Miscavige and the Church of Scientology from talking about criticizing whatever, Danny Masterson, this case, these women. They can do that all day. This lawsuit is not stopping them from doing anything. So the anti-slap thing just doesn't work. And I'm always offended whenever Scientology tries to use the anti-slap law because it was designed to help the little person who's being squelched by the big bullies, like the Church of Scientology. So, and I just thought that was a great point by Texas lawyer. He's saying they're trying to convince this court that the people who were harassing these women were taking part in a public debate when clearly it's about private harassment, not a public debate. So that's the first point. And
Yep.
then on the other thing, he said, as far as the judge saying this was a conspiracy, that's within the judge's purview. The judge, the thing in this country is we trust the judge to look at all the facts and say, here, hey, this is what's going on. And he's entirely within his rights to do that. So Texas lawyer thinks that this is a real cynical appeal by Scientology, and it probably won't prevail. It might remove a couple of people, a couple of things from the lawsuit, but it's not going to stop the overall lawsuit. And Texas lawyer was kind of wondering why Scientology would even bother. And I said, I know why David Miscavige bothers. Even though it's a complete waste of money, what did it do? It put the lawsuit on ice for almost a whole year.
Exactly.
That's all David Miscavige cares about. Slow it down. Make it cost money. Because not only are these lawyers having to deal with that, but it's going to cost money. These now you have to get appellate lawyers in to defend these women's position. I'm sure they're working on contingency, but if there's ever a settlement, you got to pay those lawyers too. So money, time, everything is slowed down. It's a cynical appeal. It probably won't prevail, but it did what David Miscavige wanted.
Exactly. And this is pretty consistent with Scientology's legal strategy from day one. What do we know? I mean, I'm going to draw on your memory banks here because you're such a wealth of this. I mean, we go back to Wallersheim, we go back to Laura DiCrescenzo. We're talking about timeframes here of lawsuits that are kind of similar to this one, in that we're talking about civil lawsuits, right? What was the time frame on Wallersheim beginning to end to get what is that 25 years?
Something like that. I think he sued in 79
Uh-huh.
and he finally got paid in 2002.
Right. And Laura's DiCrescenzo was 9 years or something?
9 years. Laura was 9 years from 1990 to 1990. Well, 8 years. I'm not.
Something like that.
I'm pretty sure it was 9 years. I'm pretty sure it was 9 years.
Yeah.
2000. So yeah, it was 2009 to 2018 was her case.
Okay.
And I think something like that. And yeah, I remember when Lawrence Wellersheim, I was reporting at the Phoenix New Times at that time, and I wrote about when he finally got that judgment and they finally paid in 2002. And it all went to attorneys. I don't know if Larry got a penny of it really.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked him for a quote, and he said, I just hope this encourages other people to sue the Church of Scientology. I'm like, really? You think this is going to encourage people to sue the Church of Scientology? That it took you 23 years to get your money?
And all the stalking and all the harassment and all the nonsense, right? And this is pre-internet.
They sued him like 6 times. I mean, there's Wollersheim 1, Wollersheim 2, Wollersheim 3, Wollersheim 4. Yeah, crazy.
And I brought those up just to demonstrate, just to show the point, right? Like this is what these women are up against, is an organization that is used to, that has a whole tactical playbook on how to delay, because they know every day they delay is another day that they're demoralizing, the people who are trying to find justice. So it's calculated, and as you said, cynical. It's a perfect word to describe what they do. Now, Colombia. Somehow this country and Scientology, I've never understood it, but this guy, you reported on this guy this week. What's the story on this guy? Because he sounds like a player on this.
There's a long history of Scientology targeting Colombia. I think the most obvious reason why is because the Free Winds goes there, and so they want good relations. But Scientology's really targeted the Colombian military for some reason. If you remember a few years ago, David Miscavige actually, there's a picture of him getting a medal pinned on him by a retired Colombian general.
Right.
Um, anyway, so there's a long history of that. But then I remember 2018, 2019, for a while there, anytime there was something about the free winds coming out, you would tend to see the pictures of this guy at the ship. He called himself Richard Gamboa Ben Eleazar. And he was, you could even tell then he was cosplaying as a rabbi. You could tell that it was just all bogus. And, there are these various shills that Scientology somehow always finds who are bishop this and rabbi that, and they're willing to get together in an interfaith and swear that Scientology is a legitimate religion. Scientology recruits these people and keeps them around. And this guy was, this guy really figured it out because not only was he kind of their interfaith guy, but he was spending all his time on the free winds. All right. I mean, so I mean, and there was a time there it was kind of hard to, he was just around all the time. And then I remember 2019 when they opened an Ideal Mission in Panama City, he was there, praying and all this. Okay. So, I kind of forgot about him for a while. Well, I don't know, 2 weeks ago, Chris, he posted on his Twitter account that the president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro, has appointed him director of religious affairs of the entire nation. He is the highest ranking clergyman in the Colombian government with the power to grant and deny licenses to churches. And he's a Scientologist pretending to be a rabbi.
Oh my God.
The Jerusalem Post dug into this. They are so offended. They found that he's a complete fake. His rabbinical ordination was a diploma that he got from a Christian diploma mill in Florida. That he's been denounced by the Simon Wiesenthal Center. He's been denounced by the ADL. Everyone's saying is a fake, but nobody's pointing out until we did. Oh, by the way, he's a Scientologist pretending to be a rabbi, which makes it even more bizarre. So,
what an interesting operation, and what an interesting way to get a foot in the door to an official government position in a national government. I mean, Scientology salivates over that kind of thing. Miscavige just has wet dreams about that sort of thing. It's huge. I mean, it is. And even if, by hook or by crook, make it go right, baby, right? That's Scientology. So how interesting that they are getting, I mean, this is a little bit of a controversy waiting, kind of blowing up here for them.
it's very controversial there. The journalists in Colombia can't believe it. A couple of radio journalists managed to get him on their show, and they were Jewish. And they were just asking him, like, what's the next big Jewish holiday? And he was getting it wrong.
Oh, come on, Mr. Rabbi. Come on, dude. At least memorize the holidays. Come on. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. What an interesting little operation they got going on down there. How interesting. I will say this. Scientology's programs, from my years of watching them roll out, are much more opportunistic than you might imagine, right? It just so happens Joe Schmo, comes on board the Free Winds, or just, a Scientology PR just runs into a guy, in the military, gives him a way to happiness. And the guy goes, hey, this looks cool. And boom, suddenly there's a line. Like it's some opportunistic thing that probably opened up Colombia, or maybe a whale down there set up a meeting or something. Because you're kind of like, it's a little random, right? Like
Yeah.
Colombia. That's kind of how it probably. I'm 99.9 on that's probably why. Because Scientology is pipsqueak enough and hungry enough for power that it can find that it literally will take anything that comes its way. You know, because I'm sitting here thinking Colombia, and there's no drug connection, there's no cartel. It's not like that with Scientology. So I can only suss out that it must be. I mean, I don't know. What do you think, Tony? Do you think?
I don't know. It's so odd because they really went through the military there. I mean,
Right.
they had this Colonel Prado
Right.
who was their big champion there, and I remember they would send all kind. We would see lots of pictures of Colombian soldiers promoting the way to happiness.
Yeah.
Who knows how something like that got started, but Scientology milked it for everything they could.
They did. They really did. They were big on. I remember years ago, the Way to Happiness and the Youth for Human Rights stuff really hit down south of the border in the Latin American countries, and
Well, and
and it makes sense. I mean, you can see why.
you know what bragging rights Colombia has
Mm.
is the ideal org in Bogota is the only one that we know for sure Tom Cruise has actually stepped foot in.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah, and they had also is it I might be mixing countries here. Rudy Rodriguez,
Rudy
and
Rodriguez, yeah.
there were a couple major Scientology
There's
TV celebrity
there's
personalities, right?
there's a lot of whales in Venezuela,
Right.
um, but the connection in Colombia is more through the government for some reason. It's weird.
Right. Okay. Okay. We'd have to do a real research project to trace it all the way back because there's been a lot of activity over the years down there on the part of Scientology celebrities and VIPs and stuff. So it's not totally out of nowhere, but it's interesting to see
Yeah.
develop. The funny thing for me watching it from my perspective, and I'm totally wondering what you think, Tony, this isn't going anywhere. I mean, it's not like they're going to take over Colombia or
I
something.
know that you have to wonder. I mean, there's no question that while they're struggling in the US and the UK and Australia and South Africa and probably most European countries, they're struggling. They are kind of doing pretty well in Taiwan and Mexico, and I
Yeah,
think maybe some other Latin American countries as well. So, Dave's going to take whatever he can get.
true. I agree. I agree. I do think it's opportunistic. Um, well, speaking of opportunism, the LRH property that has opened up, New Jersey, right?
Yeah. So, CST, the most secretive of Scientology's branches, the Church of Spiritual Technology, it has a subsidiary under it called Heritage Properties International. And CST is the one that digs those vaults where they keep Hubbard stuff to last thousands of years. Heritage Properties, what their job is to find properties that are associated with Hubbard or Scientology and purchase them and then renovate them and turn them into shrines, museums, whatever. So, for example, so several number of years ago, they paid 2.2 million to buy a house on the Jersey Shore in Bay Head, New Jersey, where Hubbard and his second wife Sarah were living, and their baby Alexis when he was finishing up his manuscript to Dianetics. They had then that has been opened. That's like this shrine, this museum to Hubbard. Of course, they won't say anything about Sarah the baby, but you can go there. I'm not sure if any member of I don't know if you or I could walk in. Some people had assumed that only Scientologists could go in, but then I also posted a sort of testimonial from a Nigerian Christian minister that they showed the place and gave him a tour. So I think it's kind of selective, but no
Yeah.
question they're turning these places into shrines to Hubbard. So in March or April of 1950, they were living there, but then John Campbell of Astounding magazine started publishing parts of Dianetics in the magazine. And this was before the book came out in May
Yeah.
of 1950. And it was really popular. And so they started getting a lot of inquiries, and Hubbard's like, okay, this is my big opportunity. I need to be somewhere where we can set up a place where people can come. It's not going to be Bayhead, New Jersey. So he dragged Sarah about 55 miles north to Elizabeth, New Jersey, much more industrial, not so nice. She hated it. And they rented this house on Aberdeen Road, and he opened up his first Hubbard Dianetic Research Foundation in town.
Yep.
So what Heritage Properties has done is buy that house on Aberdeen Road where Ron and Sarah and the baby moved into as the book was coming out, as people were starting to come. Now they call that house the Hubbard Dianetic Research Foundation, but actually the foundation was in an office in town somewhere. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
they're trying to buy that too. I don't know, but we knew that they had bought that house some time ago for almost $1 million. The new news is that I just got forwarded an invitation to the grand opening, which is in 2 weeks on Saturday, April 26th. I'm sure it's only going to be, the whales and that kind of thing that get to come in and a private audience. Grand opening of this new, I'm sure inside it's become another shrine to Ron, and of course I'm sure there'll be no mention of Sarah or the baby or any of the other stuff that they should be hearing about. But yeah, and I'm disappointed because I can't go that day. I won't be around, and so I'm disappointed. But I'm hoping some other folks go by and maybe take some pictures of the crowd, see what it looks like. But yeah, so another shrine to L. Ron Hubbard being opened by the Church of Scientology, this time in beautiful Elizabeth, New Jersey.
Yeah.
You can hear the planes from Newark Airport going overhead all day.
That's right. Yeah, just like Hubbard. This is, and shrine's the right word. This is sort of the idea is that Scientologists will make pilgrimages, right? That they will want to follow in the footsteps of Ron as he was doing these things. And they create these, they literally refurbish, recreate. They take all the photos of the places that they have from Hubbard's archives, and they recreate down to the smallest detail, the furniture, the pieces that were there when Hubbard was there. So they really do try to recreate this kind of dollhouse Hubbard sort of thing, right? Of this is the snapshot of what it looked like, right? And it's all according to the, I'll drop that word, the hagiography, the Hubbard
Yeah.
biography, right? It's according to that, not according to reality. It's according to the church's reality of Hubbard's life. And so they get to remove whole people.
Well, I mean, if you were making a real museum to L. Ron Hubbard in 1950 in Elizabeth, New Jersey, it would be fascinating to have something about the fact that, within a year, he and Sarah were on the rocks. Within a year, the foundation was bankrupt. That they had ripped off Jack Parsons when they left several years earlier from Pasadena. I mean, there's a lot of really interesting L. Ron Hubbard and Dianetics and Scientology history that was going on there. For example, when he moved there in about April 1950, Dr. John Winter or Joseph Winter was still involved,
Yeah.
right? And this was a big deal for Hubbard to have a physician vouching for Dianetics early on. But then in fact, he wrote the first forward to the very first edition of Dianetics. But then within a year, he turned on him and said, this is all hogwash. So there's really fascinating early history of the movement that could be included in that museum. But of course, that's not what it's for. It's just there to make Scientologists feel good about, being part of Scientology. And so there will not be any hint that Sarah Northrup ever stepped foot in the place.
Exactly. What you'll find about a month or two from now, if you try to get in there, is it'll be a Sea Org couple who are assigned to run the place, keep it up, keep it dusted, get people in, and you'll have to call to make appointments to go in there. It won't just be open, all the time. You can just walk in or something like that. Just
Right.
like, and we know that because that's how Phoenix is
Right.
back house is run right now. It's like, good luck getting in there. I've tried a couple times when I went to Phoenix, and I could never actually just reach somebody to get in there. So it is a funny effort they're doing, right? And I think it has more to do with extracting more money from whales probably than most anything else, like everything else in there. Okay, a couple more things to cover here. First was a story on the billboards. Mike Rinder, some Scientology pushback. What was happening with this?
Right. I got a copy of an email. Supposedly, it was an exchange between a Scientologist and a DSA person. The Scientologist was complaining about these billboards in Los Angeles. The DSA person was saying, "We're on it. We're going to take them down." And I don't know that these emails were genuine. I had some suspicions that maybe they were kind of a put up, but it motivated me to contact Claire Headley and ask her and say, "Have you heard about? I mean, what is Scientology doing? Have you heard about them trying to get the billboards down?" And she said, "Yes, they're very upset." And the funny thing was, she sent me a statement that I published and that everyone loves because what Claire pointed out, the thing that Scientology's most upset about, that they're complaining about to the billboard company, is that on the billboards of Mike Rinder, in his quote, he says the difference between a church and a cult is what happens when you try to leave. And it's all it says. It doesn't say the word Scientology, but of course, Scientology knows they're talking about them, and they're really upset about the word cult, which is just hilarious. So they are trying to, we just, we'll see if Lamar holds firm. I mean, it's an interesting company, and some of the other billboard companies have wavered when Scientology squeals. So we'll see. But I just wanted to, like I said, I was very excited to get these emails, but the more I thought about it, the more I thought I can't really rely on these being, what they seem to be. But the point is, I did hear from Claire that this is going on, and that there's a fight going on. So it'll be interesting to see if those billboards stay up. But the number one thing is it shows that those billboards hit their mark, right, Chris?
Absolutely, absolutely, and there's no question that it was a drop dead, drop everything. What the hell? 20? What? I mean, you could just imagine the tempers and the red, what's that? That emotion, anger, right, from those movies.
Dave must have blown his stack.
Right? Yeah, exactly. No question. I mean, 20? What? So, of course, they're all over this thing. And the order, top priority order from the top is going to be get rid of them. So, making up emails is going to be the smallest of deceptions that Scientology will pull to pull this off, right? The cult word, it's a thing. All I'll say is there's a very good reason why Scientology is so sensitive to it.
Yeah.
Because it's true. Yeah. And we'll just move on. So, and finally, there was a article from news from the UK. Alexander Barnes Ross has not been idle. What do we have?
Yeah, Alex wrote a really fine piece for the Bunker. I really appreciated it. He's pointing out that, just a year ago, when he started to complain to the East Grinstead City Council, Town Council, and tried to make them aware that Scientology is really a problematic organization and they shouldn't be playing footsie with them, that he was treated really rudely. I asked a few questions and they banned me. I'm banned in East Grinstead, Chris, because I asked them a few questions.
I think I knew that, Tony. Wow.
What's that?
I don't think I knew that.
Yeah, a year ago, as this was going on with Chris, I started asking for records requests based on some of the stuff that he was going through.
Yeah.
And they reluctantly sent me some emails and said, "Don't ask for any more. You're you're banned." So I know, but they called him a vexatious bully and all this stuff. They tried to deny him public records. So he's just been very persistent, and he's been trying to explain, "I'm just trying to make you aware of what happens in Scientology, and you should rethink, going to their events and lighting their Christmas trees and all this stuff, And this week he went to some new meetings, and he said the reception he got is very different now. They're very polite. They're offering him a cup of tea. Um, and you know, right now there's a big thing going on there where the Church of Scientology at St. Hill is trying to get this change in the law to make it illegal to demonstrate outside there. And so these various government bodies are weighing a lot of different evidence. There's a lot at stake right now. And now suddenly these officials are seem to be treating him with more respect. And he and I both think that that's a big deal. I mean, if once you kind of open people's eyes and make them think, why are we carrying water for this group when there are so many abuses and controversies about how they treat people? Why do we want to be in a photograph with these people? So you know, it's just awareness. It's just making these politicians aware that they're not really serving their public by helping out Scientology. So I think it's a sign that he's making more progress. And I was just really glad to hear that they're starting to treat him a little better.
Absolutely. And if you think about things, let's just take a look at this for a second because it's worth talking about because it's a problem in Clearwater as well. And we saw this just a couple of weeks ago with Mark Bunker telling us about how one or two of the people on the city council are just mad for Scientology. They just can't make enough excuses for it. And you look into this and you find Scientology back behind the scenes, you know, wheeling and dealing and doing various things. But it might be surprising to people how little they have to do. You bring Tom Cruise out for some glad handing, or you invite him down to a St. Hill for, come up on stage and get a nice check. And, hey, it's all just fun and games. And these are a great bunch of people and it's all smiles. So from the politicians or city council members, I don't know if we call them politicians, but from their perspective, it's all good. What's the problem?
Yeah, what's the problem? Right.
They don't take them down to tour the dungeon. They don't take them down to tour the RPF space, right? So they don't see any of that stuff. So of course they push back when somebody like Alex pops up or somebody like Mark pumps up. Just an inconvenience noisemaker. Would you just leave us? Come on. We stood on a stage and got a check. What's the problem, right? They don't want, and it's this inertia you have to push through. So it sounds like that's making some good progress, and that's persistence. That's the kind of boots on the ground, going and doing the meetings, and that's the kind of resistance that's actually going to affect change. So again, thumbs up to Alex for what he's doing over there on that.
That's right.
All right. Well, cool. That's quite a week. We had a lot to cover this week, Tony. What's the prospect for this next week?
Well, we were talking about this insane story about Scientologist fake rabbi becoming a member of the government in Colombia. I've got some more examples of ways that quietly Scientology has still been making some of these inroads with government people here and there. I've got a few more examples that I want to bring up to people that I've been hearing about, just to show that even if they're struggling to get new members, and that's certainly the case in the United States, even if Dave is struggling to staff his orgs, they will never give up with the safe pointing. They will never give up with trying to make inroads with law enforcement, first responders, politicians. So I've got a few more examples of that this week.
Excellent. Well, I hope everybody's paying attention, because this is the kind of thing that when you see numerous examples of this over time, you got to know that while the opportunism may open doors in Colombia or may open doors here, there, or the other places, once it's open a little crack or whatever, OSA doesn't have anything else to do all day but try to create these inroads and harass critics. That's the two things they're doing all day, and they don't have anything else to do. So
that's right.
So they got time to do this stuff, and they work and they play the long game. So where we may hear or see one thing or another pop up here and there, no, it's actually like there's real inroads being made, and it's something we should be paying attention to if we want to not have laws passed in Scientology's favor. All right. So Tony, thank you very much for tracking all this stuff. Folks out there, like we said at the get-go, subscribe to Tony's Substack. That's what we base all this off of. Check in with us on Mondays, and I will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.